Welcome to NFL World, where the NFL starts and ends. I'm your host, Jacob. Let's recap what happened in the AFC Conference Championship game before we do the NFC Conference Championship game. The game, look, it was not a high-scoring affair. The weather impacted the game, with the score ending up as 10-7. Patriots win. Again, slugfest, a fight to the end. You name it, whatever you want to describe it as. The defenses, I was impressed with the way the Patriots played. I thought it was going to be really difficult for their offense to do something, so they would have to do something on defense. And they were making plays. Milton Williams was making a play. Or it was the coverage, it was the corners, it was Carlton Davis, it was Christian Gonzalez who had the interception that basically iced the game. It was a great job by them. You have to admit that. You look at how the Broncos played. It wasn't like the Broncos played horrible. They won. And if you think of in any other game, you only allowed the other team to score 10 points. You think you win that game. Period. There's no other ands or buts around it. There's nothing. It's what that is. But when you have whether your kicker isn't making his field goals, you have issues with your offense because your quarterback isn't playing. I mean, backup quarterback is hard. It's hard to be doing that consistently and always trying to produce. I mean, he was making some throws in the game, but it's just so challenging. You can't blame like Jarrett Stidham for being put in this position. This is a hard position to be put into whatsoever. But the offense couldn't do anything. And it goes back to the last thing, which is the lack of a run game, the lack of an offense. Broncos fans have been saying this for a year. Like the fact that they keep going to these fourth quarters of the game, they're always down, and then they have a great fourth quarter. Like that's what happens. What do you want your defense to do? They only gave up 10 points, but you couldn't scratch across a field goal. You couldn't scratch across a first down. Like it was just weird play calls, weird execution, missing the times you. That's 3 points on the board. That's 3 points if you don't. You got to make those things. And then the weather for a good portion of the game, especially in the first half, was solid. It was solid. It wasn't that windy. It's comparatively to what Denver's usually is. Though it didn't snow until the third and fourth quarter when visibility became a problem. But I don't understand that situation. Like it was just ugh. That was all I could say was ugh. And you look at this again. You have to give props to the Vance Joseph defense of what they were doing. The Patriots couldn't do anything. The problem is your offense couldn't do anything either. That was the issue. That was the entire issue. When your offense can't do anything, no matter how good your defense is playing, you can't win games that way. But I want to go back to a moment from Tennessee. A lot of people were like, it needed to happen, needed to be done. He's not a great coach. That last part, how can you say he's not a great coach? He took a team in the Patriots to the Super Bowl. He's taking them to the Super Bowl. And not in a suite. They're going to go play in a Super Bowl. This team hadn't won a playoff game in so long. If I remember correctly, the last playoff game they won was a Super Bowl. That's how long ago this has been. They haven't been there. And now all of a sudden they're going. They played well. They coached it well. This is what I'm talking about. It's not always pretty with Mike Vrabel, but it works. it's effective. The scoreboard might not be lit up, but they won the game. That's what's important. Let's move on to the other NFC, or the other championship game, which was the Los Angeles Rams against the Seattle Seahawks. What a fun game this was. I mean, the offenses in the beginning, it was a defensive shootout. It was just the way they were playing. And what you didn't expect from the Rams, because the Rams really were bad against the Bears and the Panthers. And then Seattle comes into town. Or I guess they go into Seattle's town, I should say. And they played really well, even though the scoreboard says 31-27. That's not the factor. It was a defensive battle for the first quarter and a half, 2 quarters, and then it just became a shootout. And Sam Darnold outdueled Matthew Stafford. That's what he did. They ran the ball well. I mean, obviously, the injury to Zach Charbonnet does bother them. I think it makes them a little less effective. But they ran the ball well. They threw the ball well. The protection was really good. They did a lot of positive things. I'm impressed by it. I really am. And you have to give credit to the Rams, too. This is a team, they battled. They really battled. Puka had a couple great catches that you couldn't believe. The touchdown that he had in the corner of the end zone. Like, that was a great catch. Like, how he's catching the ball, he's fading away, catches it, and he basically falls onto the pylon and into the end zone. That's how it was. It was a great job by him. Devontae Adams looked like he turned back the clock. He turned the green back. He made a play. He was making play after play. He was dominating. They could not cover Devontae Adams. The Seattle defense was a little shaky in this game, and that was what the big concern is for me, is they were shaky. We knew the Rams were, but Seattle was shaky in this game. They got to tighten that up. Like, it was a great performance all around. Someone had to win, and it was Seattle. It was a great win, and now we have a Super Bowl 49 rematch between the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. I knew we were going to get one. Remember, I did say we're going to get a Super Bowl rematch with 4 actual possibilities. There's 3 of them. We'll get a Super Bowl rematch. Like, that's what's going to happen. It was exciting to watch. I loved the game. It was great. And Sam Darnold played great. When he needed it, he was making throws. That's the important. That's what you need to do. Now, let's move on to some of the coaching news. Jesse Minter is now the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. He was originally there with John Harbaugh. He was a defensive assistant. Then he moved to Michigan when Jim Harbaugh went to Michigan and became the defense coordinator there. Then when Jim Harbaugh moved back to the NFL and joined the Chargers, Minter followed him and became the defense coordinator of the Chargers. Now he's the head coach of Baltimore. I think this is what they need. They needed a young guy with a voice who understands how to evaluate the defense. That's what they need. They needed the message. I think the messaging of John Harbaugh got stale, which happens when you've been in a place for a very long time and you have so many guys going in and out of the line. It happens. It brings a little bit of a youthful energy, but he also brings in a pedigree. He's able to work with young guys. He's able to work with older guys. Look at what he did with Khalil Mack the last 2 years. Khalil Mack has been a man possessed with the Chargers. He's been great. You cannot tell me he's in his mid-30s because he doesn't look it. The way he plays, the way he dominates is insane. They got Odafe Owe from the Ravens, actually, and Odafe Owe had dominated in the second half of the season. Tuli Tuipulotu had his best season ever under Jesse Minter's tutelage. Tony Jefferson was a scouting. I'm not kidding. He was a scout. Came back, unretired, came back, and was playing out of his mind at safety. It was an unreal experience over and over and over again. You just saw players making play after play after play. It was awesome. I think he is the perfect man for this job. He is the right age for this job. And that defense of the Ravens has not been that good the last 2 years. They have a lot of good pieces, but they weren't playing together. Now you have guys who are playing together. You got Roquan Smith, who is one of the better tacklers in the NFL, one of the best tacklers. And he wasn't playing well. Hamilton is one of the best safeties in the game. And they weren't utilizing him in the way that they needed to. Medibike got hurt, and you hope he's okay because he's a force of nature over there. Kyle Van Noy has been a revelation for them. That's what they bring. They just need the right guy to steer them in the right direction. You could say the same thing for the Steelers. They named their head coach, and it's Mike McCarthy, the former Green Bay Packers head coach and the former Cowboys head coach. This was an interesting hire to me. This was very interesting because this is against the grain for many reasons. Number one, is an offensive coach, and the Steelers always go defensive coaches. That's just their thing. Young defensive coaches. That's the second thing. The age of Mike McCarthy is 62 years old. Is this a long-term job, or is he just a bridge? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Is he a bridge coach until there's another young coordinator on the horizon? Because there was not a Ben Johnson type of guy. There wasn't. So you're looking at those guys. Jesse Minter, I thought they were going to go Brian Flores. I mean, he had head coaching experience, but he was a defensive mind. But maybe they didn't want to go that way because currently he is suing the NFL. So maybe they didn't want to go in that direction. But I did not like this choice in terms of what they normally do. Now, the reason it could work, you bring in McCarthy, who he knows quarterbacks. He knows quarterbacks. He's going to help Will Howard. But this was also a plan to try to bring back Aaron Rodgers for a year. Will it work? Who knows? But that was I think, whether they want to believe it or not, that was what they were trying to do. But we'll say this. It ended poorly in Green Bay. It flamed out in Dallas. It might happen again. Because, yes, he won 12 games, 3 straight years with the Cowboys. But Cowboys fans remember this. In 2023, that offense was not very good until Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb started force-feeding the ball, when they started force-feeding the ball to CeeDee Lamb. And that happened because Brian Schottenheimer, who's now the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, and CeeDee Lamb walked into Mike McCarthy's offense and said, hey, this offense doesn't work. Just doesn't work. Yeah, we beat the Giants. Yeah, we beat the Jets. But it doesn't work against good teams. Teams that know how to defend unknown wide receivers. It doesn't work. And they changed. And they started force-feeding the ball to CeeDee Lamb, and they won 12 games. And then they kind of reverted back to Mike McCarthy's system, and it was the reason they were so bad, along with other things, injuries and different situations going on. But it was one of the many reasons why they weren't very successful. Also, the reason is you go to the playoffs 3 straight times, you won 1 playoff game. You lost 2 playoff games against the 49ers, which you got bludgeoned in. The last 49ers game that you played in, you got bludgeoned. And that was in 2023, and that's the reason they changed what they were doing. because it was bad. They were bad. They were bad, bad, bad. You can't keep getting bludgeoned and expect, well, this is going to eventually work. It doesn't. When you play bad, it was noticeable. It was very noticeable. And if I'm the Steelers fans, look, am I against this hire? Not entirely. But I think this is more of just redoing the same old, which is we're going to have a coach that's going to win a 7, 8, or 9. We're going to go 7 and 10, 8 and 9, 9 and 8, 10 and 7. That's what's going to happen. That's not great. That's not where you want to be. And for a team that has a lot of issues in terms of age and in terms of that's not what you want. But you can rectify it in a way. Because the same thing has to go for Jesse Minter. You hired in the case of the Steelers, you hired an offensive coordinator as the head coach. You need to hire a great defensive guy, a great defensive coordinator. The same thing goes for the Ravens. You hired a defensive coordinator as the head coach. You have to find a great offensive coordinator. Are you going to be able to do that? We shall see. The Green Bay Packers hired Jonathan Gannon as their defensive coordinator, which surprised me a lot. I thought they were going to wait. I didn't mind the hire. Yeah, he was good in Philadelphia, but not good in the last 3 years as the Arizona head coach. He's taking over for Jeff Hafley. I think they panicked. They started to see some defense coordinators going off the board, and they said, we just need to grab one. And they just said, Jonathan Gannon, you're it. Boom, here you go. That's what it felt like. I don't like how they did it. I thought they could have gone a little longer and see what happened after the AFC Championship game, after the NFC Championship game. You even wait till after the Super Bowl and see what happens. See what shakes loose. They didn't. They went with Jonathan Gannon. But it shocks me. It's surprising because I thought they would have been more patient. And final news was the Cowboys have named it their defensive coordinator, their new defensive coordinator. It is Christian Parker, the former Eagles cornerback coach. He wasn't full-on safety secondary coach. He was mostly just a cornerback coach. He's 34. So he's a very young guy. He's only been in the NFL for about 7 years. But if you look at all the people he's gone to, he was a defensive assistant. You look at all the minds he's been with in the NFL, and even in college, it's an astounding number. I'm going to name you 3 coaches that he was with, or he's worked alongside or under in the NFL. Vic Fangio, Devereaux of the Carolina Panthers, and Vance Joseph. He's worked under all those guys. Or he's worked alongside those guys. He's a good coach. He's young. But you saw when he came over to Philadelphia, if you remember 2023 and how bad they were, what was the worst thing they were bad on defense? What was the worst thing? The D-line was really good. Their linebackers were injured, but when they were healthy, they were in good positions. It was their secondary, primarily their corners, that were bad. This guy comes in, Christian Parker comes in, you immediately go draft Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and fix that cornerback, fix that secondary as a whole. That's what they did. What is the thing the Cowboys struggled with this year on defense? They struggled with a lot, but their secondary constantly got burned. Constantly. That's what you're doing. And if you look who they interviewed 9 people, which is an uptick of what they normally do. So you have to be impressed with that. They interviewed secondary coaches, cornerback coaches. That's who they interviewed. They outside of a couple guys that were defensive coordinators. They tried to interview Jeff Ulbrich and they got rejected. They interviewed Jonathan Gannon, who was a defensive coordinator and a head coach before. That's typically the route they would go down. With the head coach, they would say, okay, we're going to name a former head coach as the defense coordinator. That's what they would do. They interviewed safeties coaches, secondary coaches, cornerback coaches, passing game coordinators. That's who they interviewed because they wanted a younger guy who could develop these guys. That's what they were doing. I'm not saying you did it because you want to take a jab at the Eagles. You did it because you saw Vic Fangio is a great coach and his defense is really good. The last 2 years, what has been the best part of that Eagles team has been their defense. Their defense has been unbelievable. You can't even describe it. The way they play, it's unbelievable. That's the only term you can use. That's what you're doing here. You're hoping it pays off. I'm not just hoping it pays off. I'm hoping he takes what he learned under Vic Fangio, under Vance Joseph, under Evero, every place he's gone. I'm hoping he grabs a little bit from each and says, here's how we're going to do this. And look at who they are interviewing as coaches. They are interviewing different guys, some from the Eagles, some from other teams. When the Cowboys went and interviewed Brian Schottenheimer and hired him, everyone they hired was from a different place. It wasn't just with Brian Schottenheimer. It was everywhere. They hired the best coaches, not the people that they knew, which is very different from what the Cowboys are used to. They normally just, even last year, they hired Matt Eberflus. He brought his whole staff, his whole defensive staff over. Which didn't work. The Cowboys are saying, hey, interview the best coaches, not just the coaches you know. If you feel like the guys you know are the best coaches, different story. But if they're not, why just give them the job? That's what they're doing. So I like the hire, but I think it's more because I like what they were doing in this process. A lot of Cowboys fans will say it like, oh, well, I like it. Are they saying they like it because it's not Matt Eberflus? They like it because it's Christian Puckett? They didn't know who Christian Puckett was 3 weeks ago. Or they like it because they're just delusional. Which a lot of people are going to say the Cowboys fans are delusional. I think, personally, the fact it's not Matt Eberflus and the fact that they chose to go down this path and that they chose to bring in a guy who's younger and the fact that they are allowing him to go and talk to other coaches, not just the Eagles coaches, shows how much confidence they have in him. And I think that's really the answer. But let me know in the comments, who are you surprised the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots are heading back to the Super Bowl? And also, what's your take on Mike McCarthy taking the head coaching job in Pittsburgh? For NFL World, I'm Jacob Hubert. Out.